Good day, everyone. Again, I am Geraldine S. Rivas of Jose Balazo Memorial Elementary School, Kauswagan District. At this time, I will be explaining to you about data collection through observations. The objectives are the following. Number 1, describe how data are collected through observations. Second, differentiate types of observations. Third, identify tools for recording data collected from observations. And fourth, use observation for data gathering. The key understandings are the following. First, observation uses physical senses to record behaviors or actions of respondents. Second, observations may be conducted under controlled conditions, in natural settings, and as a participant. Third, records of observations may be made based on event sampling, time sampling, and instantaneous or target time sampling. Tools, the last one, tools for recording observations include field notes, audio and or video recordings, rating scales, checklists, and anecdotal records. Okay, let's start. Observation as data collected method. Observation is a systematic way of collecting data for action research in which researchers use all of their senses to study people. Gamito niya iyang mga senses para mastadihan ang iyang participants, usually conducted in natural settings or naturally occurring situations. Watching what people do is an obvious method of carrying out research in education. Generally, observations are relatively inexpensive to conduct. Okay, good news, inexpensive. Because the researcher needs only a few resources. However, they can also be time-consuming and physically demanding. Okay, so nindot na unta kay inexpensive, murag nindot siya paminahon, pero napadyoy isa, time-consuming and physically demanding. Sige lang, we will proceed. When action researchers use this data collection method in the field setting, it involves the following conditions. First, prolonged engagement in the setting or social situation. So, taas-taas gid nga time ang atong gamiton. Second, clearly express self-conscious notations of how observing is done. Third, methodical and planned creativeness in order to accomplish the task. So, naatay series of plans, naagid plano, naagid siya mga, naagid tay isunod para ma-accomplish nato atong task. Dili pwede dire-diretso kanimo, ni akong first buhaton, this is the second one, this is the third one. Naagid tay methods and planned creativeness. And the last one, standardized recording of one's observations. Okay, so mag-record. So the methods of observation can be conducted either in an overt or covert method. So there are two. In overt observations, the participants know that they are being observed. Kabalo sila, gi-obserbaran sila. The identity and purpose of the researcher are revealed. So, ang pangalan research ang researcher gi-reveal and permission to observe them is sought. So, klaro nga nahibaluan ang tanan sa overt observations. Nahibaluan nato ang respondent, ang participants, kabalo ta kinsa ang researcher, kabalo pod na ay permission na nanghid kanila. While in covert observations, participants ay neither informed about nor aware of the observation. The study is conducted undercover. Sikreto ra jud ni siya, dili pwede i-reveal. The identity and purpose of the researcher are also concealed or disclosed. Secret lang jud siya. The researcher sometimes acts as if he or she was a genuine member of the group being observed. Muapil siya didto sa grupo. Dili siya magpahibalo nga siya ang researcher, nga nag-observe siya. So again, overt, kabalo ang participant, identify, na-reveal ang researcher, and na permission, while covert observation is secret. Dili pwede i-istorya. Okay, there are types of observations. The first one is the controlled observations. As the name implies, controlled observations are usually carried out in a laboratory setting. These are called controlled, naman, because the researcher determines the place, siya ang magbuot nga, na-determine niya asa ang lugar, o kanus siya obserbahan. The participants who will be observed, identified pod, and the circumstances where they will be observed using a standardized procedure. In this case, the participants can be randomly assigned or exposed to situations of interest. So in controlled observations, these are usually overt. Okay, controlled, di ba? Kabalo siya, asa ang place, asa ang time. So sa overt is kabalo ang participant. So mo ni siya, overt siya. The observations are usually overt in this type of observations as suggested by the setup itself. Sa controlled is overt ang iyang method. So among the strengths of controlled observations is the easy replication of other researchers using the same observation procedures and tools. So, pwede niya magamit sa isa ka laing nga researcher, i-replicate niya ang iyaang procedure and tools. The standardized observation tool makes it possible to determine inter-observer or intra-observer reliability. So, mo to siya strength, ma-replicate. Another strength is that these are easily and quickly analyzed. Dali ra siya ma-analyze. Both data coding and data analysis are less time-consuming for the researcher. Third advantage is that this can be conducted in a short time. So, dali ra siya, mas dali ra gyud siya, which will enable the researcher to do more observations and include more participants. If the sample size is large and representative of the population, generalizations can be made. Okay, mao to siya ang advantage, mga advantages or strengths. Nanapod ni siya, however, one limitation of controlled observations is that they may be subject to the so-called Hawthorne effect or demand characteristics. Unsa man ni siya? Participants tend to act differently when they know they are being observed. Kung kabalo sila, nga giobserbaran sila, lahi ang ilang attitude or behavior nga ipakita diha sa actual nila nga behavior. Sa pag-observe sa ilaa, basin imbis badlungon kay ito siya, nahimo na siyang buutan-buutan gamay. So dili jud nato ma-perfect ang ang data nga atong makuha or ang observation. Therefore, data obtained nila validity. So mao lang pud ni siya, dali siya buhaton, ma-replicate sa pato, dali easily and quickly analyze, dali pud siya short time, pero naapod ni siya limitation. So malahi ang actual gid nga behavior sa bata, lahi kaysa sa pag-observe nimo. Mo ni siya disadvantage in controlled observations. The second one is naturalistic observations. Naturalistic or unstructured observation entails studying spontaneous behavior of participants in their natural surroundings. So, dili siya nakaset up nga. Uy, mao ni siya, magkuan ko niya. Pero ang naturalistic is in a natural setting, in a natural surrounding. The researcher merely records whatever he or she sees that is relevant to the purpose of the observation or to the research question that guides it. The researcher also observes students in places where they are naturally found. Example, in their own classrooms, in the playground, in the cafeteria, in the laboratory, instead of a behind one-way mirror in a laboratory classroom, as in the case of controlled observations. Kaya sa controlled observations, diha jud ta, kana jud nga time. Pero in a naturalistic observation, in a natural surrounding, mo appear na siya nga behavior, diha nga place. So ikaw nga researcher, aptitude ka to observe the said behavior of your participant. Dili siya pwede nga, ay kay unya na lang ko. Kung dili, bantayan jud nimo kay natural raman ang paggawa sa iyang behavior mong participants. One of the strengths of naturalistic observation is that there is ecological validity in the data collected because behavior flows naturally. Mani siya natural lang yun, dili kay nakaset up. Another strong point is that, excuse me, it can spawn new ideas for interventions for future implementation. So, magamit po siya sa uban nga action, research. Thus, this type of observation is not only functional in collecting data about an intervention implemented, dili lang kay gamiton siya para sa intervention, but also in conducting preliminary investigation prior to the installation of an innovation. So, magamit nimo siya as preliminary investigation. The researcher is given a chance to study the situation, which may lead to paths of new inquiry that have not been previously considered. So, manggawas na diri ang uban nga mga observations nimo nga ay dili raman di ay kanira ang akong dapat ma-observe sa iya naa pa man gyud di ay lain. So pareha ani iyang na-discover nga bata dili lang kay siya nga badlon ngano unsay reason mag-dig deeper or mag-go deeper ang imo ang observations bata ngano di ay nga ingana iyang behavior. So, maski pa di ay nga na ang behavior, kuan po day, naapod siya lain nga behavior nga positive side of the participant. Despite these advantages, naturalistic observations have few limitations. Na siya few, so mas nindot siya kay na siya strength, pero few iyang limitations. One is the fact that these observations are often conducted on a small level, such as one or few classrooms in the researcher's school. So, limited lang ang imong respondents. And another one is that observations collected in natural settings are often less reliable than those conducted in controlled or contrived setups. There are other variables that are at play that are difficult to control, much less to identify. So if the researcher wants to implement the same intervention in his or her classroom, he or she may not obtain the same results and come to the same conclusions. So ingon ana gyud, lain-lain jud og result, lain-lain gyud og conclusion. Magdepende gyud na sa imong respondents. Technically, repeatability or replication of the intervention may not be as precise as the original implementation. Okay, so if the researcher is using, because they have the same problem, and then they have the same problem, and the researcher is using the same intervention with that problem. So there is no this is not precise as the original implementation. Lahi ra gyud siya sa original nga nag-implement. Another disadvantage is that researchers who apply naturalistic observation may have to undergo training. Aray, mag-training gid ka to be able to appreciate distinctive aspects of a situation that are worth further attention. So, kinahanglan kuan siya, medyo crucial siya kung magamit ka og naturalistic kay ay mga manggawas na mga attitude nga sensitive, mga unsa ba diha. So, you have to train yourself to be able to appreciate these aspects. However, the major limitation of naturalistic observation is that, wala sir. Okay, so however, the major limitation of naturalistic observation is that the researcher cannot manipulate variables or control extraneous variables, unlike in controlled observations where these are both possible. So dili pwede nimo siya ma-manipulate. Thus, inferring cause and effect relationships between independent variable and a dependent variable is rather tenuous. So, dili nimo siya ma-manipulate ang naturalistic observation. So, we will proceed with participant observation. Similar to naturalistic observation in the sense that it also focuses on studying participants' behavior in their natural surroundings. So participant is the same with the natural observation, except that in the former, the researcher actually joins in. Muapil ang researcher sa group and becomes part of the group. Participation gives the researcher the opportunity to get insights into the lives of the group. So muapil ang researcher o join sa group para maka-observe siya. This is actually the strength of this type. Participation gives the researcher the opportunity to get insights into the lives of the group. This is actually the strength of this type of observation. As for limitations, finding the opportunity and privacy to record one's observations is quite difficult when the researcher chooses to participate in the group activities. Nga naman, taking notes openly is avoided. Dili ka pwede mag-take down notes while you are participating and while you are participating to the group and you are observing. Dili pwede. It might blow the researcher's cover and expose his or her identity. Dili man pwede nga secret raman ni siya, dili man pwede nga makabalo ang mga participant nga nag-observe ka. He or she also has to depend on his or her memory. Dapat wide imong memory nga dili nimo malimtan ang mga nahitabo and wait for some time alone to write the notes from recollection. So dapat wide ang memory. So lisod ni siya kung limtanon ta kay malimtan na to ang uban nga mga na-observe na to nga mga nahitabo nga napakita ang attitude sa bata sa tong participant. One problem here is that some details may be forgotten. It less likely that direct quotations will be remembered. Katulad yung mga importante itong may numduman. So malimtan siguro ang uban. Another constraint for participant observations is that the researcher may lose his or her objectivity and become biased when he or she becomes too involved with a group. Kay murag ay maudi ay kung involved ka maudi ay nging aning attitude because iyang family ana so go deeper manimo ang life sa imo ang giobserbaran so mahimo na kang bias. The researcher may see what or she wants or expects and may engage in selective observation. So, pilion na lang niya ang iyang na-observe instead of reporting everything. So, dapat tanan unta ang iyaang dapat tanan ang iyahang i-report nga mga observations pero iya na lang pilion kay migo naman siya na nakita naman niya na bias naman siya, so pilion na lang niya. So this is selective observation, imbes i-report ang tanan. This will downgrade the validity of data collected. So dili na siya reliable, mo downgrade na, imbes mo upgrade ni downgrade. Among these three types of observations, the naturalistic and participant observations are most applicable to action researchers. Naturalistic and participant observations. But we have to consider those limitations, those disadvantages. So we have to be very careful when observing our participants. Dapat dili ta mabayas, pero dili na to malikayan usahay mabayas ta sa atong observations, sa recording of observations. Di na to matalik tanan, but we have to do our best to tally everything. Then ang problema pod if malimta na to ang uban nga mga information nga atong na-observe. Kay especially in the participant observation, we should not dili na to i-reveal ang atong identity as researcher because we will be involving in the group. Ni-appeal ta sa grupo. So those are the three types of observations. So we will proceed to the sampling method and data to be recorded. Okay. Both random and non-random sampling methods are applicable for observations. In controlled observations, random sampling may be used since the observation takes place in a setting that has been especially prepared or arranged by the researcher. Kay set up man tanan ang controlled observation. So random sampling ang atong gamiton. The researcher can randomly select the students who will participate and who will observe. So random sampling in controlled observations. But these types of sampling, the random and the non-random sampling, again, this will be explained by the other speakers. So, however, in naturalistic and participant observations, non-random methods such as purposive, accessible, quota, and snowball sampling are common and feasible sa naturalistic. In these types of observations, the student participants cannot be pre-selected. Dili ta pwede makapamili sa naturalistic o participant observations or pre-arranged. Dili pwede na to siya ma-arrange. Nga kanilang nga mga bata ang akong gusto nga respondents. He or she will have to choose those who will be specifically observed from among the students already present in the observation situation. Dili ka pwede nga, uy, ikaw gusto ko mo-appeal ka din ha, dili. But you have to observe who are those present in the observation situation. So again, in the controlled observation, since set up siya, we will be using the random sampling. And in the naturalistic and participant observation are the non-random methods. Aside from the participant, the observer has to decide on the sample behavior. So aside from unsa of method, napajud siya sample behavior to be, there are three ways of this, which specific behavioral data collected. Okay, first, the event sampling. Event sampling refers to the pre-selection of the types of behavior or events the researcher is interested in. Unsa ang iyang behavior or event nga iyang ganahan or interesado siya. He or she then records all of their occurrences. All other types of behavior are disregarded. So kung unsa ra to ang iyang gusto or interesado siya ana nga behavior, katurag yun ang iyang pilion. Disregarded ang uban nga mga behavior nga dili na kinahanglan. One type of behavior that may be selected for observation is disruptive behavior in the classroom. Bunog na kaining disruptive behavior pero hangtod karon naa pa jud gihapon. The observer focuses only on all the behaviors considered disruptive and pays no regard to other types of behavior. Kung lahi na pod na behavior, bahala pang negative, dili na gyud nato siya i-appeal og lista. But all those who are those behavior that you are only interested, katurag yun ang imong ipang lista, ipang record. Second, time sampling. The researcher decides in advance the specific period of time during which the observation will be carried out. So, kung kanusa siya, may tabo ang imong observation. Like for example, the researcher may plan to observe behavior during the first 10 minutes of each hour in the morning. So, katulang 10 minutes sa morning. Thus, all the behavior exhibited during this period and this period only will be recorded. Kana ra gyud ang imong i-record. Kana ra gyud ang imong ipang-record nga mga behavior. Wala nay labot ang pagkaabot sa recess time. Kaya is 10 minutes each hour in the morning. So, dili na pwede tong lahi na nga time. So, mag-set jud ka og time. Kanus-ani mo siya kwaan og sample. And the third one is instantaneous or target time sampling. Moments during this which observation will take place are selected ahead of time. So, pinili ang mga moment nga iyaang layo pa lang, piliun na niya ang mga moments nga iyang i-observe. Only the behaviors that occur during these moments are recorded. So behaviors that appear before or after which these moments are not attended. So kana lang imong gusto nga kana siya nga panahon, kana siya nga moment, kana siya dapat i-record nako iyang behavior. Pero katong before niya o after ana nga moment, dili pwede. So like for example, kanang magklase, yan na. Pero pag wala pa ng klase o after klase, dili siya pwede. Everything that happens in other times is overlooked. One example of these moments is when the observer concentrates on observing the students during the time that sa time nga nag-group work sila. Di kaya pwede nga time nga walay group work, nag-recess baron or nagdula. Dili pwede, but the moment that you choose to observe Okay, so there are methods in the data collection. Literal descriptions on observer has seen, heard, and experienced, including utterances that are considered important, are written in a notebook. So, gisulat niya sa iyang notebook kung unsa ang iyang mga na-observe, iyang nakita, iyang nadungog, iyang experience, tanan isulat niya sa notebook. Such data have to be transcribed in full prior to data analysis. So, i-transcribe siya, imo sa siyang i-arrange, aron sa nimo pili ang mga observations, usa nimo siya i-data analysis. Field notes, that is one tool. Second tool is audio and video recordings. Observations are captured electronically using a tape recorder or a video camera. So, usually karon mga cellphones na ang inyong record. Be sure lang gyud nga dili full ang inyong cellphone. Dapat ilimpyo ninyo ang cellphone, walaon sa tong mga video o mga pictures o unsa pa diha para pag-record nimo sa imuang observations, dili siya maputol. So, dapat na dili jud nga walay ma-miss sa imuang observations. Like field notes, contents of this recording should be fully transcribed. Again, it will be transcribed before data analysis is performed. Dili pwede itong the whole recording. Imong panguhaon ang mga important details or mga observations that are relevant to your study. Okay, third, ratings scales. Intensity, prevalence, or degree of behavior as observed are indicated along a scale by the observer. So, unsa ang iyaang ganahan ba siya maminaw nga nag-role play? Saman, strongly agree or never, mga inana. So, unsa ang iyaang intensity or degree of behavior? Checklist. List of important behaviors or actions to be observed are used. Only those that are manifested are present. Usually with a check mark under a yes, present, or observed column. So, checklist. So, mga important behaviors, okay? Nagpakita siya ani, ako siyang yes. Ako siyang i-present or i-observe. Depende sa researcher, unsa ang gamiton. Yes, present, observed. Or pwede pod na i-no. So, ilang i-check dito kung unsa nga mga important behaviors ang ilang na-observe. Naka-arrange na dito mga behaviors nga related pod sa atong research study. Next is anecdotal records. Short stories or narratives of significant incidents that have been observed are prepared with detailed descriptions of specific behaviors but without any interpretation. So, anecdotal records, this is common to us. We are doing this one in our class. So, mga significant events nga atong na-observe sa atong mga students mo na atong i-prepare. So, with detailed descriptions of specific behaviors, pero dili ta pwede mo interpret sa iyang behavior nga ay mao di ay kay kuan. So, dili. Isulat lang nato ang atong mga observations, ang mga specific behaviors nga iyang gipakita, pero dili nato siya i-interpret. Okay, we are done with the tools. So, now, the data analysis techniques. So, again, the qualitative, quantitative will be discussed by other speakers. They will discuss it thoroughly. But in my topic, I have to show to you what type of data analysis technique will be used to the said observation tool. So, like for example, this one. Qualitative data analysis is applied to field notes, audio and video recordings, and anecdotal records. So, qualitative. Imo na siyang qualitative data analysis sa field notes, audio and video recordings, and anecdotal records. Themes are derived from cursory reading of the transcripts. Na ay mga themes. After which, specific behaviors or utterances are classified according to the identified themes. A frequency count of behaviors under each theme may be derived. So, I think Doc Saicon will discuss to you about this qualitative data analysis. So another one is quantitative or statistical tools are used to treat data obtained from rating scales and checklists. So kani, ang rating scales o checklist ang gamiton is quantitative or statistical tools. So the measures of central tendency, median and mode and variability, the range, the variance, and standard deviation are computed for each item and or the entire scale or checklist. So again, these quantitative statistical tools will be explained to you by maybe it's Sir Marquil Villacora, and I'll be saying to you the type of statistical analysis that will be used in this rating scales and checklist. So part of the observation is the rating scales and the checklist. So we will be using quantitative or statistical in treating the data obtained. Correlation coefficients between variables of interest may also be calculated if these are relevant to the study. So if relevant ang correlation coefficient, ato po siyang i-calculate. Moreover, inferential statistics such as t-test and f-test may be employed if group comparisons are desired. Okay, so klaro na ang katong mga anecdotal records, checklist, anecdotal records, katong other type of tool will be the qualitative, and then the rating skills and checklist will be the quantitative data analysis. So here are the guidelines for conducting observations. First, be unnoticeable. So, ayaw pagpaklaro. Be unnoticeable. It is important to ensure that your participants do not notice you as an observer, except in controlled observations. It is good practice to spend some time with the students that you will be observing before you commence the study to allow them to get used to your presence. So, again, be unnoticeable. Second, be objective and specific. When jotting down notes to describe behavior, use terms or words that are clear, kanang klaro, precise, and formal. Formal po ang pagkasulat sa imong mga words. Remember to focus on that you need to observe, not on your interpretation of it. Again, you have to focus on the behavior that you need to observe, not on your interpretation of it. Gibalik-balik yun nga dili pwede ang interpretation kay malahi na dayon ang results sa research. Third, be systematic and thorough. Your observation, recording should be exact, they should be logically sequenced and complete, and should include only what you saw and heard. Remember to separate your observations from your interpretation. So systematic, dapat again, sequence and complete. So unsa ra imong nakita o unsa ang imong nadungog, dili pad pwede ang imong interpretations. So the ethical considerations to follow in conducting data gathering through observations are the following. First one, permission. Again, permission from parents, administrators, and others concerned should be sought prior to conducting observations. So mananghid jud ta katong sa school heads, sa parents, especially sa parents, sa school heads, until our SDS. So we will write a letter requesting or informing that we are conducting this research. Dili pwede magdiretso. Second, confidentiality. Protection on the rights of participants should be central in the mind of the observer. I-protect yun nato atong participants. Yun ta malimot ana. Full names of student participants who are observed should be replaced with code names or pseudonyms. Ito siyang ilisan og mga code names. Confidentiality of data obtained should also be maintained. Field notes, audio and video recordings, rating scales and checklists used, and should be kept in a secure place. So ato gid siyang taguan. Dili pwede nato nga ibutang lang sa table o kayon dayon sa. So we have to keep this one to have this confidentiality of their the data that we gathered. Should this be shared with other individuals except with fellow researchers or teachers in the research team for the project. Thank you and God bless.